Morning, everyone. Sorry for the slightly delayed start. We just had a couple of technical issues that we needed to deal with. So thank you all for joining in. I'm Jen Kutsia. I'll be walking you through today's webinar. So on the line, we've got, aside from all of our fantastic guests, we've got Annette Meir, who is the Chief Director for Water Use Compliance and Enforcement at the Department of Water and Sanitation. We've got Minja Milovanovic, who's the Head of Research and Innovation at the African Potential. She also holds a joint staff appointment with Wits University and is a research psychologist and public health specialist with over 20 years of experience on the front lines of infectious diseases, including HIV, tuberculosis, and COVID. Then we've got Nkateko Maholobela, who's our research ecologist at the African Potential. He's got a wealth of experience and information in aquatics ecosystems, and he has the lucky guy just returned from 14 months in Antarctica. We've also got, from the lab side, Lindsay Stewart-Isherwood, who is a strategic innovation lead at the Wits Diagnostic and Innovation Hub. She holds a master's in molecular medicine and has over 2 decades of public health experience, focusing primarily on the intersection of HIV and TB. And she's got a wealth of experience in laboratory and digital health. Then we've got Nishi Harris-Bursad, and I'm sorry, Nishi, I still butcher your surname. I will get it right. With Sibanye-Stillwater's environmental team. She's responsible for the South African region's operations across the West Rand and Northwest Province. We've got Leon Stelton, who we are just getting online at the moment. Leon is on. Hi, Leon. Who is an experienced senior consultant with the Water Board in Limburg in the Netherlands. He's in charge of initiating and maintaining international relations with Belgium, as well as primarily focusing on process and stakeholder related to purification, wastewater chain, and water quality. And he's the site lead on the Blue Deal project in Blesbok, South Africa. And we've got Ayanda Ntetwa, who is an engaged consultant at DWS and commission leader for the Mining Commission in the Blesbok Spate project. And he has extensive experience in AMD plant and related issues. So that just gives me a quick intro for everyone. I'm the CEO of the African Potential Group. I'm a public health specialist with over 20 years of experience. Quinton, who has not sent me his introduction, and Nishi is going to introduce Quinton in a moment. So I've got over 20 years experience on the intersection of the HIV violence and mental health epidemics across marginalized populations in South Africa. I've advised the USAID Global Fund and the United Nations, and my work has informed policy across South Africa with my community-based approaches influencing research and intervention globally. And Nishi, if you could just introduce Quinton very quickly, that would be great.
Oh, sure. Sorry, Jenny. I had to come in there. Quinton is Quinton Polsa. He's on the line. Quinton, I'm sure you can introduce yourself as well, but I'll do it on your behalf. Quinton's got a chemical engineering degree from Stellenbosch University. So he's working with us at Sibanye, and he's currently our water specialist, and he specializes in water treatment plants, commissioning and running them for us. So very important person in our world, and also instrumental in the wastewater treatment plant MOAs and work that we do with municipalities. So Quinton, he will be presenting on our behalf as well, Jenny. So thanks. If you want to add anything, Quinton, feel free.
That's perfect. Thank you, Nishi. Thanks, Quinton. So the purpose for today really evolved out of work that we've done in the Cradle of Humankind, which is sort of northwest of Johannesburg, a very beautiful World Heritage site that's well known for the humanoid fossils that have been found in the area that are encased in a very sensitive karst hydroecology. So it's a dolomite geology that sits under that area, and it has been sort of plagued for a number of years by various different pollutants that have all really culminated recently into what we think of as sort of really the perfect storm. And so today is about building up and contextualizing the dynamic and the findings that we've seen there, but also just reflecting on the amazing work that's taking place in the country. And I know we often focus on where things are going wrong, but we also want to showcase where things are going right and what's being done in the country. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Annette to speak to us about the current state of wastewater treatment in South Africa.
Let me just get to my presentation quickly. All right. So as Jenny has introduced me, I'm Annette Muir. I am responsible for water services regulation and water resource regulation nationally. I'm also responsible for the blue drop, which looks at drinking water, green drop, which looks at wastewater, and the no drop, which looks at water use efficiency within municipalities. And I am responsible for compliance and enforcement nationally of all sectors and all water uses in the country. I've been asked to just give an overview of the state of wastewater in the country. And my DG always says that we need to contextualize and just explain that our water and our systems go through cycles. And we draw raw water from rivers and dams, and we treat it in water treatment works by either our water boards. We have 7 water boards in the country, or through our municipalities. So in Gauteng specifically, it is Rand Water that provides our potable water to our municipalities for distribution, which then supplies it to our households. There's a legal requirement that this water must meet specific standards, drinking water quality standards. It's set by the National Bureau of Standards, SANS 241. And municipalities are required to conduct regular tests to make sure that this water is safe and meet these standards. After you use it in your households or use it in the mining industry or in our normal industries, the water is contaminated by your washing powder, by your dishwashing liquid, your soap, your whatever else, or through your industrial processes. It then normally gets collected into a sewer system. If there's gradient, it needs to be pumped to our municipal wastewater treatment works. These works then are supposed to remove waste from the water and return it to our rivers and in some instances to the sea. And the effluent from wastewater treatment works, which goes into our rivers, are required to meet minimum standards. And those are usually set by our water use authorizations, normally a water use license. However, we see that there's presence of sewage in rivers, dams, our beaches, even groundwater, and this results in increased risk of life-threatening waterborne diseases, including diarrhea, cholera, and meningitis. And this is obviously a risk to those most poor, most vulnerable. And it provides intolerable living conditions for our communities who live with raw sewage flow near to or into their properties on a daily basis. Unfortunately, in South Africa, we see this on a daily basis. This leads to devastation of tourism and service industries. We see that with the tourism in eThekwini. The normal trek of the valleys down to Durban is not happening anymore because people do not want to go to the beach and not be able to swim. We see a risk to fresh produce through irrigation with polluting water, contamination of our groundwater with the same risk, and increased treatment costs for potable water. The more dirty our water is, the more we have to spend to clean it to those standards we mentioned for SANS 241. There's severe environmental damage, including in some instances annihilation of fish. We see fish kills when there's sewer pollution or sewer discharges taking up all the oxygen. We also see it with algal blooms and with the presence of alien invasive species like hyacinths and water lettuce that we see on Hartbeespoort Dam and the Vaal River as 1 or 2 examples. As I said, we measure performance of our municipal sanitation systems through the Water Services Act and specifically through the Green Drop program for wastewater. And we also conduct regular inspections of our systems against the water use authorizations. The 2022 full Green Drop and 2023 Green Drop progress report provides evidence of a decline in the performance of our municipal wastewater systems. When we do a full Green Drop assessment, we look at the entire system from the sewer lines, pump stations, and wastewater treatment works. We look at the financials, the personnel that's appointed to operate these systems. And when we look at the progress reports, we only look at the systems because of the workload that is involved with this. Unfortunately, we see a very bad decline in terms of the performance of our municipalities, not just in terms of wastewater, but also in terms of drinking water, although not as rapid as wastewater. And also when we released on the 5th of December, the no drop, the water use efficiency or the non-revenue water that we have in the country is also problematic and also leads to the fact that our municipalities do not have the financial revenue collected to be able to pump it back into investment into the wastewater or into the drinking water systems. Now, we have been doing a lot to try and address the problem, although we do not see a reverse in the trend of the worsening sewage pollution, and therefore we believe that different measures are required to reverse this trend. In terms of roles and responsibilities, it is important to note domestic wastewater and sewage disposal is a local government function, and it is enshrined in the Constitution. It's not a function that is meant for national or provincial government. We have a duty to support municipalities and also to regulate them. So we've got two pieces of legislation that applies to municipal systems, and the first one is the National Water Act, where sewage pollution is a criminal offence, which can result upon conviction of a 10 million rand fine or a 10-year imprisonment. And this offences could include something like not complying to a directive or failure to rectify pollution. And we will also now, through the amendment bill, be able to hold municipal managers and mayors, as well as company directors, liable, not just for sewer pollution, but any pollution for that matter. This is in line with what is already provided in NEMA, so it's not anything new. It's just for the alignment of the Water Act to the Environmental Act. So as we said, we are responsible for taking appropriate regulatory action, including issuing of notices and directives, which also is known as administrative enforcement. We can also initiate civil action going to our state law attorneys to be able to approach a court for an interdict. And we are enabled under the National Environmental Management Act to be able to do criminal investigations through an MOA with the SAPS. Our environmental inspectors can investigate these offences as well on behalf of the SAPS. In terms of the Water Services Act, the second piece of legislation, we are responsible for developing of norms and standards for sanitation services and drinking water, and which municipalities are legally bound to comply. But there is widespread non-compliance. These norms and standards include detailed requirements in terms of quality of effluent from wastewater treatment works, the testing of effluent, and for the minimum qualifications and staff managing the works. So we have regulations that specify what process controllers are required to run specific technology. Right, so this is the map from the Green Drop report. We have a scorecard where blue is excellent, green is good, gray is average, yellow is poor, which is 30 to 50%, and then critical is 0 to 30%, which is your red area. So in the 2022 Green Drop report, 334 wastewater systems out of the total 850 in the country, belonging to 90 municipalities, were in a critical state of performance. This includes not only their effluent discharge, but also their financial ability, also their staff requirement, whether they have the right engineers, right process controllers, right correct scientists, whether they are doing operational monitoring, whether their systems are being maintained and operated. So all of these factors together was identified as poor in these 334 systems. They were all issued with non-compliance letters and required to provide action plans. Most of these did provide those action plans. Where none was provided, we moved on with administrative enforcement under the National Water Act, and we also have taken further steps on this. Obviously, when you have these critical systems, they are leading to pollution of our water resources. So the underlying causes of poor performance of our municipal wastewater systems is non-adherence to our procedures. Our infrastructure is in poor condition due to lack of maintenance. And as I said, it is more obvious in terms of wastewater than under drinking water. And the causes of this is that municipalities are not hiring the necessary staff. They've got weak billing and revenue collection, non-prioritization of budgets for maintenance and operation, poor leadership and management. Big problem that we're also seeing is that despite the systems being a critical space, we still have developments and new bulk connections being approved and connected despite having the capacity to treat this waste. Currently, there is no legal requirement for municipalities to use revenues for the sale of water and from sanitation charges to fund the maintenance and operation of water and sanitation infrastructure. This is also not something that is in the Department of Water and Sanitation's mandate to make compulsory. It is within National Treasury's purview. We also see, obviously, an increase of theft and vandalism affecting our water resources or our municipal systems. There's only so much that the department can do in terms of support, even though the Constitution says you must support. If the leadership of a municipality is not responding to the directives or not taking advice, then performance can only be improved by addressing the leadership challenges. The main cause of decline in maintenance and operations is that municipalities must fund their works through the sale of water and through their trading services. We provide grant funding to assist with refurbishments and upgrades, but we cannot fund operation and maintenance. And this means that we need to do some legislative amendments. So in November of last year, we published the Water Services Amendment Bill. It went for public consultation in January of this year. And just key things that I want to indicate is we are introducing a licensing system to enforce minimum competency requirements for water services providers, not the Water Services Authority, which is a constitutional mandate, but that we provide for the competency of our water services providers. Also, currently, the Water Services Act is very weak in terms of enforcement, and we have strengthened that through our amendment. As government, we have also not been as consistent as what we should have been in the past. However, in recent years, we've had strengthening of a regulatory function and also consistency in terms of taking action. Since 2017, we have opened 88 criminal cases for sewage pollution, including 52 municipalities. And this number is growing. It's across 9 provinces. 78 of these cases are still underway, and for 5, they are with the National Prosecuting Authority, and 5 others have been ruled upon with plea and sentence agreements. The money that gets fined does not get paid to us. It gets ring-fenced for the works to be fixed as per the instruction of the directives. We also do civil enforcement. It does take a bit long as well. It is a bit faster than criminal enforcement, and we've had some successes in that as well. So a very popular question is, why don't we just take over all the municipalities, all 334 wastewater treatment works that's polluting? In terms of the Constitution, we cannot do that. There is provision under the Constitution for an intervention, but it is done through provincial cooperative governance. Section 63 of the Water Services Act also does provide for some form of intervention, but it is a very onerous process and it has to go through the Council of Provinces. Also, when you go into a municipality to say you are taking over the water services function, remember a municipality does more than just water services. You have no say in terms of how the revenue gets then put to you to help carry the cost. You have no say over their personnel. You have no say over their procurement, and therefore you are actually not very efficient in taking over such a system, and it doesn't sustainably help. When you look at the interventions over the last few years between Kokta and others, the success ratio or the turnaround in municipalities has not been notable. However, should we be brave enough, or I don't know, hypothetically, let's say, if DWS were to take over the dysfunctional municipalities or the works, we would require 60 billion rand for repairs to address the capacity backlogs and then 10 billion per annum for operation and maintenance. Then we will not also be able to do our current job that we have. Specifically to Percy Stewart wastewater treatment works, which is also some of the topics that we raised about today, is we provide funding to our local municipalities and district municipalities through the Water Services Infrastructure Grant or our Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant. We provided 35 million rand in 21-22 for refurbishments. However, due to lack of maintenance and theft, it's dysfunctional again, together with the two pump stations that feed it. Currently, it's wastewater in and wastewater out. Over several years, we have exhausted our administrative enforcement under the National Water Act and the Water Services Act to address the pollution. We have moved now to a criminal case for non-compliance to a directive and for continuing with pollution. This is currently under investigation with engagements already with NPA. And then we have also instructed our legal services to appoint state attorneys so we can get an urgent interdict and a civil case to also ensure that the municipality addresses the operation of the wastewater treatment works. I think, Jenny, from my side, that was the background that I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Annette. That's really useful. And thank you for sharing so openly and honestly, and you for giving us some input into Percy Stewart, which I'm sure there are a number of people on the line who wanted that and really do appreciate it. Just for everyone on the call, we will be taking a Q&A at the end of this. Please do put your questions into the Q&A section and we will get to them once everyone is presented. If you could also just note, if you've got a question for a specific person, please just put a note for that. So Netja, thank you very, very much. I think it's really useful to have that background. And on the back of that, I'm going to hand over to Minyan and Nkateko to speak about the cradle and the intersection of human and human health and wastewater.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see my slide?
I can now.
Wonderful. So thank you for joining us today. We will be presenting a summary of our recent findings from the various water bodies we studied in the Cradle of Humankind, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. 6 months ago, we were commissioned by private stakeholders in the Cradle to investigate and propose a solution for the pollution in the Blowbank Spruit and its related water bodies. Through this process, we realized that the source of pollution is complex and addressing this issue would require a coordinated and multifaceted approach drawing in multiple stakeholders. As many of us know, the Cradle is notable for its dolomitic karst system, which contributes to its human history. However, the porous nature of dolomite itself means that polluted surface water could be seeping down, compromising our underground aquifers. So one of the first things that we did is we began by conducting a desktop review to assess past and present activities in the area and understand what information was actually out there to inform the pollution of the area. So basically what was publicly available. Following this, and in collaboration with local residents, we carried out field work where we aimed to map identified areas of concern that could be contributing to the pollution of the different water bodies. My colleague Intersect will shortly present the ecological assessments and water parameters. And we also collected water and sediment samples from 8 collection points, which were analyzed for pathogens, pharmaceutical residual, and metals. It is important to note at this point that what we are presenting is very much a summary of our results, and we could not include all different parameters and variables that we assess. So this is just a quick one for today's webinar. However, what is also important to note is that our samples were a snapshot of what is going on at a single point in time in those water bodies. So it is really a snapshot, and we recommend further and more intense investigation. So following the desktop review, we know that the history of water pollution in this region dates back to the beginning of gold mining in the 1880s. And over the years, with improved technologies and evolving legislation, we have seen a reduction in the amount of acid mine drainage, which has been entering the water systems. However, there is a residual impact of mining, which remains in the soil and the surrounding environment that still affects the area. Since about 2003, there's been increased signs of effluent spills, which have been observed, and this has particularly been affecting the Cradle of Humankind World Heritage cave sites. This situation has worsened, and today large amounts of untreated wastewater are being discharged daily into the river system. Engagement with stakeholders from the affected communities revealed serious structural concerns impacting the water body. Some of these have already been mentioned. These include unmanaged effluent dumping sites, which you can see on the bottom left-hand side, where raw sewage is being pumped into a dolomite cavity, outdated or non-functional infrastructure like pump stations, overflowing manholes, unmonitored dumping, and discharge of untreated sewage into the river. I'm going to hand over to my colleague to talk about the ecological assessments performed.
Okay, thanks, Min. So as part of the assessment, we conducted an ecological assessment, the pollution tolerance index. So this pollution tolerance index makes use of microinvertebrates to assess the health of the ecosystem. So if you look on the figure presented with microinvertebrates and arrows going to the right and the left side, you will see that we have species which are more tolerant to pollution and some which are less tolerant to pollution. So on your right hand side, you will find species which are more tolerant to pollution, and on the green side is species which are less tolerant to pollution. So basically how the assessment works is that we conduct different habitat sampling in the river system, which makes use of your riffles, which are fast-moving water in rocky areas, as well as your leaf pack habitats and undercut banks. So a combination of sampling of these 3 habitats gives us a sample of the area which we're sampling, and we can analyze that for microinvertebrates and record which microinvertebrates are mostly predominantly found in that particular area. So once we find more of your tolerant microinvertebrates, that suggests that the river system is more polluted. But if we find microinvertebrates which are less tolerant to pollution, then we assign higher scores to them, which increases the PTI score, which means that the river is less polluted. So if you look at the graph on the right, top right, you will see that we have different sites starting from about 24 kilometers from the wastewater treatment. So what's interesting here is that on the 8 site which we sampled, only 2 presented a fair score, and the 2 which presented a fair score was one of the site which was which is fed. This is a dam which is fed by a furrow from the river down at the site. So this dam is filtered. Basically, the water is filtered through the different areas before it gets to this particular site. Hence, the PTI score is fair. It's at 12. What's also interesting is that we also sampled on the other bar, which you see, which has a PTI score index of 13. We sampled a spring, which comes from an underground water source. It looks very pristine, but what we noted is that it also had a fair score. It was not as good as we thought it would be. And as we continue the presentation, you will note that the same spring we conducted water sampling on, and we found traces of fecal coliform and E. coli, which suggests that we might have underground pollution happening at these aquifers. Just the last part from this slide, if you look at the table which is presented here, you will note that the dissolved oxygen as far as 24 kilometers from the wastewater treatment is very low. And from the wastewater treatment, near the wastewater treatment, it goes down as little as 11.5%. So it shows that the wastewater treatment is having some significant impact, even as far as over 24 kilometers outward. I will hand over back to Minya to present more on the health aspect of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we were curious to understand, knowing that this was raw sewage that was being discharged into a river body, what type of enteric microbiological and viral contaminants we could find. So we went out and we collected water samples, which were sent to 2 laboratories for testing. The first lab specifically focused on detecting enteric microbiological and viral contaminants, which are pathogens, bacterial or viral, that primarily cause diseases in the gastrointestinal system. The list on the left-hand side shows the contaminants that were identified. Again, I want to stress that this was a snapshot. We went in, we collected samples. This was not early in the morning when people were getting ready to go to work. This was not late in the afternoon when people were coming back from work. This was in a normal afternoon during the week. We went and we collected a water sample, and these were the viruses and the bacteria that we were able to detect. As public health researchers with a background in infectious diseases, we were quite interested and curious to see if we would be able to detect any tuberculosis in the water. So we also collected water specimens that were sent to a specific TB lab associated with the University of the Witwatersrand. And the graph on the right essentially shows us that, yes, we are able to detect TB DNA in the water. While this finding is intriguing as scientists, it is also extremely alarming from a public health standpoint and warrants further investigation. These findings suggest that there are clear significant contaminants present in the water samples. The presence of such pathogens, especially in water sources, raises concerns about potential health risks for communities relying on these water bodies as their primary source of water. The situation warrants a more detailed investigations, as I've mentioned before, to assess the scale of contamination in order to protect public health and prevent any further waterborne diseases. But we wanted to understand it in a little bit more detail. So we collected more water samples and we sent them to a further 2 laboratories for testing. The one laboratory, we specifically were interested in knowing whether or not there were any pharmaceutical metabolites or byproducts that were present in the water. And the other laboratory, we wanted to understand what was the metal composition of the water. As mentioned, this is a historic mining area, and the legacy of mining still resides there. Pharmaceutical metabolites in water is a global concern, especially because our conventional wastewater treatment plants are not typically designed to remove these compounds. Studies around the world, and those done in South Africa, have detected significant levels of pharmaceuticals such as painkillers, antibiotics, and antiretrovirals in water sources. These particular metabolites can pose a risk to aquatic ecosystems and potentially impact human health through water consumption and the compounds being absorbed by the crops themselves. So what we found in our results, and again, I want to stress that this was a snapshot, our assessments identified alarmingly high concentrations of pharmaceutical metabolites, not only at the wastewater treatment plant outlet pipe, but actually up to 20 kilometers downstream in the river as well. So what we were able to find is we were able to find traces of analgesic, which are painkillers, 2 different types of antibiotics. We were able to pick up antihistamines, anti-inflammatories, and antiretrovirals. So I'm going to take a moment to let that set in. Okay. Then I'm going to take us to the metals. When analyzing the water samples, we detected metals such as aluminium, water and sediment samples. We detected metals such as aluminium, calcium, iron, magnesium, and sodium, amongst many others. It's important to note that the cradle, the soil in the cradle is iron rich, so we are aware of it. It is part of its natural structure. However, we were able to find traces of uranium in the water, but unfortunately the test itself that was done was not able to indicate whether uranium levels are above or below the WHO recommendations, and therefore further testing using more specific instruments is actually required. One final point to make here is that the chemical complexity of the water and sediment specifically makes it extremely difficult to provide a simple answer, so a simple yes or no answer, whether or not there is the presence of uranium in the water and the sediment. Okay, so what does this all actually mean? Oh. Sorry, everyone. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Although individual findings might seem concerning, but they could be manageable, when combined in one water system, they signal a much greater problem. The water parameters show that the river is unhealthy. Bacteria, which naturally occur in the environment, are now being compounded with heavy metals, which can cause mutations, and the presence of pharmaceutical metabolites, which could contribute to resistance. Where all of these overlap is the sweet spot of a potentially much larger problem. However, as we saw previously, this issue is not isolated to the cradle, and we suspect that there are multiple water systems which are likely being affected by this. Now, while the cradle water system isn't considered a strategic water source for the country, the pollution that it carries impacts around 2 million people going from the source. It even touches and affects the Hartbeespoort Dam, and it makes its way all the way down to Xai-Xai, Mozambique. Additionally, we suspect that the polluted water is decanting across multiple sites in the cradle into the underground aquifers, thus impacting the underground water sources, specifically one of the largest underground aquifers in Southern Africa, which, when we put it in context, is essential for South Africa's long-term water sustainability. And as a result, in our concluding comments, it is critical to address the findings with urgency to prevent further environmental and a public health crisis. Thank you.
Thanks, Min. That was really well put and well put together. So appreciate that. I think what's been incredibly interesting and difficult for us is I've grown up on a farm, and I've grown up being able to, skinny dip in rivers and drink river water and hike mountains and drink stream water. And going into the cradle and meeting people who are being forced to bath in the kind of water that Minya has just described, and who are unable to drink the water that years ago their forefathers and their forefathers before them were able to make a living off that land, has been incredibly difficult. And watching over the last 6 months as businesses have closed has been immensely tough for us. And through that has evolved an approach to, that I think we've always embraced within our HIV and TB work prior to this, around really collaborating and bringing in specialists. And so I'm going to open up to a couple of those people. So first of all, let's hear from Lindsay Isherwood, who's going to speak to us about wastewater treatment and an amazing product that she's developing called eLabs. So with that, Lindsay, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you to African Potential for this opportunity. We are humbled by it. Thank you. I was going to try and share my presentation here. If you can give me a second, please. Please let
Okay.
me know if you can see it.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we're hoping to provide some sort of assistance to provide positive impact in the years to come as we tackle the situation. So we're going to be talking about enhancing water monitoring, early warning signals, and community engagement through digital and laboratory medicine interventions. So I'll just first describe who we are. We are the Wits Diagnostic Innovation Hub, and our founder and executive director is Professor Wendy Stevens. We have experts who lead research and development and innovation, routine laboratory services and clinical trials, and digital health and implementation science. Our vision is to accelerate access to the most affordable, innovative diagnostics to those who need it the most, and our mission is to design, develop, evaluate, and implement those innovative solutions and processes that address critical challenges in the pathology value chain for those patients, or in this case, citizens affected by priority diseases, and help drive policy change. We are part of the Faculty of Health Sciences of the University of the Witwatersrand, and we are a research entity of the Wits Health Consortium. We are also strategically linked to the National Health Laboratory Service through Professor Stevens' position as the Strategic Director of the National Priority Programs. So we manage South Africa's HIV and viral load testing programs. Mezzanine is our technology partner. They are a Vodacom subsidiary that designs and delivers digital solutions leveraging the ambiguity of mobile devices. They enable enterprises to connect, engage, and transact with their clients. They're the ones who designed the electronic vaccine data system, EVDS, with the National Department of Health during the pandemic. They are a for-profit entity with a shared value ethos that is to make societies more productive. And Mezzanine focuses on Africa, public sector mostly, and can provide their services almost anywhere in Africa. So why do we want to be part of the solution? Well, our capabilities stem from over 25 years of providing laboratory medicine expertise for priority diseases in Africa. We have a very deep understanding of the gaps across the pathology value chain and the management of innovation pipelines. And we are African leaders, skilled at translating innovative solutions in laboratory medicine to improve public health. So what is our approach? Well, we are proposing that together with digital health innovations, and one of them being e-labs, and another one being e-citizen that has been designed by Vodacom and Mezzanine, to interlink with communities and citizen science and communities and citizen scientists. We want to help empower communities with rapid diagnostic tests to monitor water quality for improved local responses to water contamination through early detection of pathogens like E. coli, Vibrio cholera, Salmonella typhi, and other heavy metals, etc. We also would like to somehow provide support for centralized testing, even if it means through training purposes, to improve the quality management of these centralized testing, whether it be phenotypic microbiology, chemistry, sequencing, etc. So that is what we would like to bring to the table, and I'm going to actually talk more about this e-lab solution. So what does e-labs look like? Well, currently it has been scaled in South Africa and Zambia to help improve the monitoring of the HIV and TB programs. It is supported by PEPFAR partners as well as the Ministries of Health. And this solution can actually be adapted to assist stakeholders in the management of wastewater quality. E-labs integrates into legacy systems, and it has the ability to track and trace specimens across the entire pathology value chain, from the point of sample collection, in this case water, to the time that the results are executed. It operates with a front-end mobile phones and or desktops and back-end operational dashboards. Multiple data points are collected in near real time and used to reduce specimen resulting turnaround times and expedites results, communication, and alerts to optimize decision making. To date, eLabs has been implemented in over 3,500 facilities across Zambia and South Africa, and over 28,000 healthcare workers are registered and using this system, with over 24 million of tests going through the eLab system since 2017. What is important to indicate here is that this is the workflow of the entire pathology value chain. As laboratory scientists, will break it up into pre-analytics, analytics, which is in the laboratory, and post-analytics, which is the resulting. We can help actually from the point of sample collection, whether it's through citizen scientists and rapid diagnostic test strips. We can collect data from the water source, and we can actually track and trace where this water sample is going from point to point logistically and timestamp it. And we can also, and this is all in real time, we can monitor this through back-end dashboards and collect all of this data, even through the laboratory, and right to providing critical alerts, whether it's back to the citizen scientists or communities or to whomever the results need to go back to. So we can build on the existing backbone of an already scaled system, and it can actually accommodate changing landscapes as well. And like I say, direct communication and messaging to communities. The e-citizen innovation is another digital innovation, has been created by Vodacom and Mezzanine. And this is not to monitor the pathology value chain or samples or help the monitoring of water quality through laboratory medicine, but more to understand infrastructural and service delivery services at a community level. So I'm just providing this slide to show you the evidence of scale in South Africa and Zambia, albeit it is in the HIV and TB programs. And you can see these are snapshots of some of our dashboards. And this particular one, for example, is the courier or logistics dashboard, where we can actually monitor couriers or drivers right down to individual courier names. Because you must imagine, when we're dealing with HIV viral load samples, specifically, we need to ensure that these samples get to the lab at the right time. So I'm not going to go on much more. I just want to conclude that WITS-DIH is backed by a strong multidisciplinary team expanding across laboratory medicine, clinical medicine, geospatial analytics, data scientists, and bioinformatics that strives to build strong foundations that lead to strong futures. So let's build stronger futures together. Thank you. And I'd like to just provide some acknowledgements and to say that in our team, we do have a medical microbiologist specialist, Professor Adriana Duze, as well as a principal scientist, Dr. Vidya Keshav, who has been quite helpful in providing assistance around water science. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. That's really great. And I suppose a lot of people listening to this are wondering why we would be presenting something on HIV and TB when we're talking about water. And I think that the big point is that one is the backbone, and two, collecting 24 million samples from human beings is probably a lot more complex than collecting samples from far fewer wastewater treatment works and far fewer rivers and tributaries. And so working on some of the principles that we have historically developed and very successfully rolled out in other sectors, I think are going to become immensely important in how we implement and support DWS and support municipalities in moving forward. And please don't get my positive outlook to mean that I don't see the abhorrent state of water in the country. I absolutely do. I just choose very proactively to be looking for solutions. And that's why we are focusing very heavily on solutions and on mapping a way forward. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Nishi or Quinton, who are going to speak to us about how they have actually been mapping the way forward as Sibanye-Stillwater in partnering with DWS and partnering with Mogale on actually trying to get shit done.
Good morning. Please let me know if you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can.
See it there.
Okay, perfect. Okay, yeah, just to start off with, I think it's always good to explain to people who Sibanye actually is. Sometimes with the name, people think we're a water company, but we're actually a multinational mining company who started in 2013, and we have a head office here in Joburg. Our core business is gold mining, PGM mining, and then also we recently moved into lithium, nickel, and some other green metals as well. ESG is quite an important part of how we do business, actually embedded in how we make decisions within Sibanye. So we are quite focused on sustainability, and yeah, we're quite focused on sustainability. When you look at our workforce, we currently employ more than 80,000 people globally, so we're quite a big company. And we know that as a mine, you're not operating on your own. Our mines are situated within communities, so it's important to understand what's happening within the communities around our operations, and to invest within in local development, because at the end of the day, it will benefit us as well. As part of our strategic vision, we want to create value for all of our stakeholders involved. So, and we do that through our own operational excellence. So by improving the way that we do business, sustainability, yet again, and then innovation. And when you look at our little strategic badge over here, innovation is actually, it's part of how we do business and part of our values. And what we would like to see ourselves as a leading precious metals and green metals producer globally. So that's Sibanye in a nutshell. So in terms of partnerships, I think it's good for us to start talking, just to explain the Western Basin AMD plant, because that's where we have a successful partnership at the moment. So if you're not aware, within Gauteng, there's basically three big AMD basins, so the Western, Central, and the Eastern Basin. So Sibanye is involved in this part on the Western Basin side. So yeah, on the Western Basin side, that little bit over there. So in 2002, as Minya mentioned as well, there was the AMD decant started. At the time, there was some minimal treatment done by the mining company. It was not a constant flow out of the mines. In 2010, it became significantly worse. With heavy rains, and the DWS then built a mine at the time to implement a short-term solution. In 2012, the intermediate solution at the Western Basin AMD plant started. In 2014, that's when Sibanye got involved. And we also started our surface air mining process, which might sound just as opening up another void or just another mining activity, but it's also part of rehabilitation, and it did improve the overall quality within the void quite significantly. So we saw an increase in pH, a reduction in metals within the void itself. And then also from that period, we started quite a significant drive to upgrade the facility and to improve the overall quality coming from that system. In 2016, we also implemented a new pump station, and we were in a position to then start pumping about 30 million liters of water per day, which is quite significant if you just think about what we are doing in that space. So as mentioned, this is a project that's in partnership with the DWS and TCTA, and it has been quite successful to date. What we are doing in that space is we utilize the AMD and then we remove the metals. So we're quite proud to say that last year we managed to get a 99.87% compliance, and year to date we're standing at 100%. So hopefully we don't have any issues within the next 2 months. But no, we are continuously improving the system. Currently, we can treat 36.5 million liters per day, and we just recently completed another plant upgrade, which will take us somewhere between 40 and 45 million liters per day. So we have the capacity to treat the AMD within this region over here, and that's the water that flows and at the end of the day joins the effluent from Percy Stewart, which then flows past the cattle of humankind, and at the end of the day it blows down the crocodile. So what we are doing in this space is quite important, And what we would like to emphasize is the importance of a successful partnership and how a private company and government can work together to achieve something and something positive. So there's still opportunities for us to improve the system. I say no system will ever be perfect, and maybe that's just me as an engineer talking, but there's a lot more that we can do. So there's value recovery initiatives that we can drive to make the system a bit more profitable, because this is not operated for any financial benefit at the moment, and it's costing, so between Sibanye, TSTA, and the department, it's about 96 million rand per year. So it is quite a significant cost to manage this, but at the end of the day, it's for the well-being of the environment and all of the downstream users. So jumping over to Percy Stewart. So as mentioned, our AMD plant connects with the flow from Percy Stewart. So whatever we do down here and what's happening at the Percy Stewart Wastewater Works, it will have an impact downstream. Again, if you just refer back to Minya's presentation earlier, you can see if our system doesn't work, their system doesn't work, you basically get into the situation where you have this ideal pot of nastiness where all kinds of bad stuff can happen, and we don't want to be in that position. But I think it's also important to emphasize, even though we have a compliance team running down here, there might still be some other users within this vicinity, illegal miners or other irresponsible mining companies, which is discharging basically raw AMD into the environment. And we saw that a couple of years ago with some other mines in the vicinity before they stopped the operations, where it's basically with irresponsible operations, they can have quite a big negative impact. So, yeah. So, as mentioned, so Sibanye Stillwater got involved because of the AMD plant. So concerns were raised by the community within the Cattle of Humankind, and then also the Cattle Management Authority. From Sibanye's side, we are quite confident, and we have all of the evidence to back us up that from where we are sitting and what we are operating, we are doing the responsible thing. Now, we are spending the money, we are operating the systems, and we also have quite an extensive monitoring program to provide evidence to whoever wants to see what we are doing. So just a couple of snapshots. When it comes to AMD treatment, you normally look at your pH, your sulfates, or your iron. I'm not even showing you uranium over here because it's non-existent in our effluent at the moment. So we take it far below the even the SANS drinking water limit, which is 30 ppb. In terms of pH, you can see it's basically a straight line. We are below a water use license limit of 9.5. So a high pH is also not ideal, but we are far from the acidic line. So we are in a position to utilize the acidic water quite effectively. Our sulfate loads are also below our water use license limits, and you can see, even though it looks relatively small, it's continuously coming down, and that also is another indication of the improvement of the water quality within the void. And if you look at our iron coming from our system, yet again, it's non-existent. We are quite far from our water use license limit. So from our side, our system is performing quite well. So if that's not where the key issue is, then there's some problems at the wastewater treatment works. So what we then decided was, after some request, that we will support Khale City, the Cattle of Humankind Management Authority, and then also the Save the Cattle's group, which is a concerned citizen group of the people living within the cattle. And that's basically to restore the Percy Stewart wastewater treatment works. So this is in the form of pro bono support. We will provide oversight, project management, there's water quality reviews, and then technical advice where needed. And all of this has been captured within the MOA with Khale City. And it's an agreement between Sibanye Stillwater and Khale City. And we are quite clear in what we are bringing to the table. And then obviously you need all parties involved to make this thing work. So the moment we have an agreement that ends in June next year, And hopefully during this period, we will be able to resolve some issues. And yeah, so there were some initial recommendations made by Sibanye. And if you look at the wastewater works, or any wastewater works, to be honest, it's not difficult to make it work. It's relatively simple technology. It's if you understand the flow coming into your system, the quality coming into your system, and then just managing the little blocks within the plant, then it works. There's significantly more complex processes and systems around, even within Krugersdorp, from a technical point of view, that works. So a wastewater work should be the last thing that we should struggle with. So we made a couple of recommendations, and that was just to control what's coming into the system. So some of the work has been done, and we saw the positive impacts of. So they moved, for instance, from a 20,000 COD load in the inflow to about less than 4,000, somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000, which is already a significant win, in my opinion. Then the water quality monitoring program, which we also identified quite a few gaps. Now, there's operational water quality monitoring that needs to be done, because if you don't monitor what's going on your site, then there's no way for the operators to actually manage the system. So that's some recommendations that we made. And then we also assist with some water quality sampling as well. And then there was some engineering work that we conducted in fixing various systems. So the first part was always just to start with the primary treatment systems. Now remove the solids and some of the biggest stuff coming into the circuit, and then you will win. Again, that's a simple fix. Some work was done by Mogale City over the last year, and we saw some improvement, but there's still a lot more that can be done to get the system to stability. And then as you move down to the primary, to the secondary treatment, and the final disinfection, all of those things, and it requires work. So if you fix those things, which is not difficult, then you should get the plant to a point of compliance. And then simple things that we picked up. It's stuff like housekeeping, and nobody wants to work in a plant where you have grass that's half a meter tall. It opens up a lot of other risks as well. So there's basic things that we picked up. Instrumentation that was non-existent. And then I think, as mentioned in one of the earlier presentations as well, it's quality of the operators that you employ. Now, it's your wastewater works, it's an important part of your municipal infrastructure, and it has quite a big impact. So we need people that's properly trained, that understands these systems to make the necessary changes throughout the day, so that we can hit those compliance targets. Because you can go and spend the 80 million or 200 million to get on fixed and operating properly, but if you don't have the people in place to operate the plant, then that's money down the drain again. And then obviously there's project management, sound project management principles that needs to be introduced within the plant. Because it's again, if you have all of the plans but you don't implement it properly, then you are doomed to fail again. And then just some, and this is basically a summary of what I mentioned now. So in recent times, there has been a lot of security incidents again. So I know there's a project underway at the moment where they want to improve site security with new fences and new security guards and cameras, which is good, because yet again, you can't go and install something and then get stolen the next day. The engineering and infrastructure interventions, as mentioned, it's not difficult interventions, but due to the state of the plant at the moment, it's not something that's going to happen overnight anymore. So there's a path that you can take, which will take you somewhere between 12 and 16 weeks to get to a point of compliance. But the long-term sustainability will take you about 9 months to get there. So because there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of some civil work, some new mechanical installations, and that's just to get the plant to a point where you can operate it compliantly for the next 15 years again. And then what we also picked up is just monitoring and control equipment. It seems like simple stuff, but if in 2024, we should not be reliant on somebody to always just take a sample and then make a decision an hour, 2 hours later. There's instruments out there now that will make our lives a lot easier. We can send it to a central control room, and then we can make the decisions. And these things are not expensive, and it also reduces a lot of risk out of our system. And these tools are actually, if we look at it now compared to 5 or 10 years ago, it's significantly cheaper, and you will get your return on your capital quite quickly. Yeah, so in terms of the way forward, so I shared some details with regards to the successful operation of the Western Basin AMD plant. I think there's a lot that we can all learn from that relationship. So, and that's, as mentioned, that's between governments, so the DWS, TCTA, and Sibanye-Stillwater, and we operate that system in a compliant manner. We have clear roles and responsibilities and contracts and agreements in place. There's clear financial audit trails. At the moment, we're currently being audited again. And it's good because it keeps everybody around the table honest. And at the end of the day, you want to achieve compliance. So if you have something, so if we can learn from that specific partnership, we will definitely be able to win at a place like Percy Stewart as well. I don't see why not. Mention if you have clear roles and responsibilities in place, and then just also transparency. If we can be honest with ourselves and with all of our stakeholders, then we can hold each other accountable and just basically take it from there. So that's our passion.
Thank you, Quentin. That was a really great summary, in particular giving focus to Percy Stewart, which I'm sure, again, a lot of people are wanting to know what the plan is there. And I think if I reflect back on what Annette had said, that, if province or national were to take over the running of a wastewater treatment plant, that they don't have control of procurement, finance, legal, human resources. And so what I want to pick up on what you've said is just the need, and it's a really urgent and important need, particularly going forward around maintaining these systems, is the need for capacity development, which brings us on to Leon from the Blue Deal Project. So Leon, with that, I'm going to hand over to you to talk us through the Blue Deal Project.
Thank you very much, Jenny, for the opportunity to introduce the Blue Deal program in this webinar. I'm going to start sharing my screen. I don't know if you see my presentation.
We can see your presentation.
Yes. What's the Blue Deal? The Blue Deal is a cooperation in the Netherlands between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, and the Dutch water authorities. You see on the left corner the Netherlands with 21 water authorities, water boards. I want to tell you a little bit more about those water authorities. In this cooperation of the Blue Deal, we seek to help solve global water issues. That's our main objective. And I'm really proud of the Dutch water boards. I'm proud to say that we have the safest and the cleanest delta in the world. But we have a lot of experience. It started, the origin is in the 13th century, so we have a little over 750 years of experience working with water boards. What we do is that we are responsible for flood control and water level management, water quality management, and wastewater treatment. The regional water authorities are legally embedded in the overall democratic structure of the Netherlands. They are empowered to collect taxes, and they collected total in 2024, so this year, is 2.6 billion euros. In rands, that's times 20. So we collect a lot of money, and it equals 1.8% of the total tax burden we have in the Netherlands. For your idea, a family, an average, pays 315 euros per year for regional wastewater or for water management.
Sorry.
What we do as a blue, sorry?
Just to interject, would you please put it in presentation mode?
I didn't do that.
No. It'll just help us see it a little bit bigger. Thank you.
I thought I've done that.
It might be showing us
I think it's only showing the first screen.
yeah, so Leon, if you click on the bottom right side where it's got the sliding scale to change the view, the how much you're zoomed in, there's a little icon that looks like an old school presenter picture on the right hand side at the very bottom of your screen. And if you click on that, it'll turn it into presenter mode.
Does something change?
No. Do you want me to share from my side, Leon?
Yes, please.
Okay, give me 2 moments, please.
That's
Sorry about this, guys. Our first technical glitch, so we're actually doing really well.
yeah, that's because we are so far away.
And this, I think this one.
Share it so you can take over.
There we go. Yeah, if you let me take over, that would be great. Screen. There we go.
Yes.
Leon, and do you want me to go to the next slide?
Yeah, just click the slides. Just stop there. Just stop there for for a moment. Just go back. Go back, please. Yeah. The blue deal. No, you can leave that last one. Like I said, the blue deal has right now 17 partnerships in 15 countries over the world. A lot of them are located in Africa and in South America. We have one in Vietnam and one in Europe, in Romania, where we're working on a finance structure. So what the main goal of the Blue Deal program is to provide 20 million people worldwide clean, sufficient and safe water. But let's focus on South Africa. Next slide, please. Yeah, you can click a little bit more, then I'll do it. No, that was one too many. Blue Deal South Africa, we have a joint partnership between the Netherlands and the South African government until 2030. But the working relation on water management is since 2004. The first program we had was Kingfisher. I don't know if some of you know that name, but it lasted until 2018. In June 2018, an MOU was signed with Prime Minister Kuchele Nkwinti. I don't know if you pronounce his name right, but he signed that MOU. And in March 2020, we launched the National Blue Deal Partnership. And that started with some projects in South Africa. At the moment, we have 5 projects in South Africa. I come to that on the next slide. But important to mention that the projects are part of the South African NWS master plan. So they are linked to that plan. And the idea is to have in South Africa safe, sufficient and clean water for 2.5 million people. Also important to say that the DWS is the lead partner in this cooperation. The Blue Deal projects, you can click 5 times, Jenny. Yes. In that order, I will mention them to you. The first one is on the right side is Crocodile River near Nelspruit. And the aim is to improve the performance of 6 wastewater treatment networks in 3 different municipalities. The second one is Blesbok Spruit project near Springs, and that's restoring a wetland according to the Ramsar criteria with the involvement of the city of Ekurhuleni. And that project has 3 objectives: the removal of the water hyacinth, improving the water quality and job creation by using the economic potential of the plant biomass. The third one is Freighter Dome project. It's improving the quality of the Roar River in the UNESCO Cultural Heritage Site. So there is also the link with the Cradle of Humankind. And that project consists of improving of the performance of the wastewater treatment plant, but also dealing with raw diffuse discharges outside the UNESCO heritage site area. Down below on the fourth is Theewaterskloof Kloof. That's a new project we added to it. It's near the Western Cape, and it contains the reduce of diffuse pollution and improve the sanitation in informal settlements. Quite a sentence. In close cooperation with the people who are living there. So we are going to look for stakeholder enrollment. And the last one, it's in KwaZulu-Natal. It's Musunduzi Umgeni River, and it contains the enhance of water resource management in that area with the cooperation and collaboration of partners and stakeholders and improve climate resilience. So those are the 5 projects we are, as a Blue Deal program, work on. Next slide, please. Yes, that's the one. What we are doing in South Africa is the focus on the projects with long-lasting partnerships. The program, the Blue Deal program, is until 2030. That's the MOU time we have agreed upon, but we hope that we can continue. And it's all about knowledge exchange between the Netherlands and South Africa. A colleague-to-colleague program, so we are working with a counterpart on the South African side. For instance, I'm not a project leader for Blue Deal in South Africa for the Blesbox project, but I'll do that together with a colleague of mine. He isn't present at the moment, but we do that. We lead the project together. And important to mention that we have no capital investments. Phase 2, right now we are in phase 2 of that program. There are 3 phases. Phase 2 is the key period in this project. The focus will be on implementing plans made in phase 1, and that will contribute to the actual improvement of the water quality. Phase 1 was mainly about establishing commissions and bringing the right people together and identify the problems and name possible solution directions. And we find sometimes that the issues are bigger than we initially see. For example, it is not just plugging a leaking sewer and that's the problem solved. Phase 2 must show results if we are not to lose the trust of the administrators or the local population. The picture that popped up right now, that was what I saw the last time I visited South Africa. This is the discharge of a wastewater treatment plant, and I was, at least to say, a little bit shocked of what I saw. I took that picture and I stood a half a minute downstream of the wind, and I immediately got a headache from it. So there's a lot of things that we have to do to solve the problems. Next slide, please. This sheet tells in a nutshell the approach of the Blue Deal as I have just told it. In it, you can also see, for example, that we do not only work in other countries, but we also cooperate among ourselves. We regularly have webinars in which we share experience with each other. What can the Blue Deal do? The Blue Deal can offer help with access to expertise in water management, for example, data monitoring or water quality, connecting to national and international experts, advice on nature rehabilitation, and facilitate collaboration between partners. And then the last slide, please, Jenny. Like I said, the Blue Deal is a program of knowledge sharing. For example, we are learning from South Africa and dealing with drought. You have a lot of experience in that. And less obvious one is also load shedding. Our network is close to maximum capacity, so we need to prepare how to cope if it actually fails. Ayanda isn't present, I see. I do not hope something serious happened to him. But if there are any questions, I will be happy to relay them to him as well. I look forward to a fruitful discussion, and please do not hesitate to contact me if you would like to know more about the Blue Deal program or the content about the projects. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Leah. I think for those who know me, that's probably the first time in a very long time that I've allowed a man to boss me around. But hopefully I was good at managing your slides. So sure, it's quite a lot to take in, considering the various different issues around wastewater treatment, and, really thinking through how we move forward. I mean, when Annette presents, it's an incredibly overwhelming picture. Considering how do we really address, how do we partner with government, how do we support moves to help municipalities and help national government in addressing wastewater treatment. One of the thoughts that I think I've raised it previously, for those of you on the call who know me, and for those of you who don't, I raise this quite a lot, is really looking at innovative financing solutions. So things like social impact bonds, I think, are really important. Net threw out an enormous number if they had to take over running wastewater treatment plants. And it really is an insurmountable amount of money and time and effort and resources. But if we had to start looking at how we could leverage impact bonds or water credits in helping to upscale, develop capacity, I think we really could start driving solutions that are going to help completely redress and revolutionize how we approach water and sanitation and water sustainability. And I think the other thing that's really important is as Quentin spoke about the value recovery from mines, there's an opportunity there. I know that there are massive banks of sediment that we have come across in the area that we've been working in. Some of them are definitely taller than me. When I sunk down into them, I was about waist deep while I was taking sediment samples. I can tell you that I did not smell very good for the rest of the day. But there are also opportunities for downstream offshoot businesses that would generate revenue that are going to support ongoing maintenance. So whether it's the generation of electricity through methane or through a bioreactor that's running, or a bioreactor that's running off the sediment that's come from the wastewater treatment plant, there are incredible opportunities, and it's just about leveraging those. There's also opportunities as we sort of head into climate change, whether or not you're a Republican and don't want to believe in it, or you're like the rest of us and you can see it happening every day. The reality is that we are going to need potable water, and we're going to need to be reusing our water far more. And I think that's incredibly important. So for us, we've been on this amazing journey over the last 6 months with what started as a very snarky letter that I sent through to a private landowner after attending a function on the state of the river and, the smell and the property, and not really understanding the broader complexities of the issue, has developed some really incredible collaborations. And what we can see is that it's through collaborations that we're going to be able to start resolving this. Whether those collaborations are communities coming together as citizen scientists, as citizen activists, and that's incredibly important, so whether it's the river group that Quentin was referring to, the group that we've been part of, or the Magaliesburg River Forum, or Catchment Forum, or, I know there's a Vaal Catchment Forum, whether it's one of these groups that's coming together as civil society to put pressure on government. And I'm sure Annette hates us all doing it, but at the same time, I'm sure she greatly appreciates it, because if there aren't people standing up and being the change, how is this change going to happen? And then there's the monitoring from a community level and the feedback loops that are really important. So I see within the Q&A, there was a question that was asked a while ago around communicating through to communities around timelines. It's incredibly important that we start to create systems that allow communities to monitor change, monitor what's taking place. I think eLabs, Lindsay, has the real opportunity to do that. And then there's having national initiatives that I think are being put together, policy changes to water that mean that, to our water policies that mean that people can be held personally responsible, and municipalities can be held responsible, or other polluting parties can be held responsible for the pollution is really, really important. But what we can see across all of this is that it's multiple stakeholders coming together that are going to be the change in this. It's not one person. And I think that's incredibly important. When we have 300 plus systems that we need to effect change in, we need to do this as a collective. And so what's evolved for us is something called the Water and Antimicrobial Vigilance for Ecosystem Health Consortium. And the WAVE Consortium really is aimed at a One Health transdisciplinary approach. So what you can see from everyone that we've brought in is we've had everyone from ecologists to research psychologists, basic scientists, laboratory, government, engineers, all coming together to speak about how do we co-create interventions. And for us, the big concern is around health. The sanitation part of water and sanitation is about health. It's about human health and well-being. And the health and well-being of our environment is very important to that. And so it is about shared expertise, resource pooling, and so that we can create stronger outcomes. And we do that with transdisciplinary teams. And as you can see, we are coordinators like herding cats, but we are happy cat herders, bringing together people from across the country and internationally to really start looking at the water issue in South Africa and shedding a different light on it. So for us, it's about bringing the health aspect to this and helping to use that to either look at how we should be redesigning our systems or implementing additional components to our systems to be able to process pharmaceutical metabolites or other industrial metabolites, but also to understand from a holistic and systems-based perspective what all of the different components and pollutants are doing in this water in terms of human health. And our hope is that in flagging the human health aspect of this, we start to drive home the reality for every person in the country that water is an absolutely precious resource and that it is vital that we work together in resolving it. And as you can see in this, for us, the community is a really important stakeholder in this. And that community could be a community in government, it could be a community of academic stakeholders, and likewise, it could be the Munsivil community, that's a really poor resourced community in Krugersdorp, who are being affected by the current state of water in that area. So it's a cross-sectoral collaboration where we have specialists in a variety of different areas. And I'm just including the slide, you can all read and get through who we're bringing on board. But basically, it's bringing on board as many key players as we can to collaborate together and find a strong way forward. And so with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. I think probably the best way is I'm going to look at the Q&A initially and start with those, but I believe I have been given control. And so if you would like to raise your hand, I can in fact give you access to ask a question. But let's start with Gwen, who has posed 2 questions. And Gwen, I might ask you just to elaborate on one of them. I suspect that there are questions that are directed towards Annette. So Annette, the question is, I'd like to address this question to DWS. When can we realistically expect the Intersect to be put in place with Percy Stewart? The situation is critical and we're seeking immediate action. So that's from Colonel Gwen Brits. And she goes on to ask, can a warning to residents be circulated urgently? Oh, so I see, sorry, Annette, you have actually responded to the one. But if you could just respond to the other around the interdict.
Right, so unfortunately, we also require assistance from our council, and they are also under-resourced, but we have secured an appointment of an attorney. Then it depends on the availability of the court to be able to access it for see you are talking, but you're muted. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. All right, so the interdict is as a backup. In the meantime, as I did indicate in the response, that we are trying through our regional head, Justice Maluleke, to meet with Mogale City to try and get to a resolve with Sibanya. So hopefully that will bear fruit and we won't need to go to the interdict, but we're keeping that as a fail-safe in case negotiations fail and we don't succeed. But unfortunately, I can't give a definite date of when that interdict may be in place. Thanks.
Thanks, Annette. That's great. If there are any other queries, you're absolutely welcome to raise your hand and we can activate your mic. So give me a moment. I've got to work this out, Gwen. And do we have Precious having a question as well? So Gwen, we're going to go with you first. Allow mic. Oops. Did I turn it off? Let's try. There we go.
No, it's on. It's on. Thank you very much, Dr. Kutsia. It's just such an amazing presentation. I can see how you are thinking ahead and thinking holistically, which is fantastic. My concern remains regarding the interdict. So my question is to DWS. Whilst I understand that meetings must happen, Mogale has not indicated to us anything with regard to when any meetings will happen. There's been no warning to our communities, and I know that children have got sick from playing in the river. My concern is that even if we had a magic wand today and we could fix up Percy Stewart in a flash, the soil around the rivers is contaminated, and that needs to be factored into any kind of rehabilitation. But keeping an interdict in a back pocket seems a bit contradictory. I think the only action that can be done is an interdict must occur, and as quickly as possible, because we've got farms that have closed down. They cannot farm their microgreens and their spinach and lettuce anymore because the E. coli has been found. That has led to, of what I know of, at least 120 jobs lost. And obviously the trout farms are no longer trout farms. They are pools of toxic sludge. And we need immediate action. You know, I see that there's interventions happening. I see that there is future work, but we need something to happen quickly. And I'd like to see how we can do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Gwen. I'm going to allow Annette to respond, but I suspect that Quentin may have some information, and I certainly have recently had a meeting that's given me a sense of timeline. So Annette, if you could just respond, and then Quentin, if you've got anything to add, and then I'll hop on.
Just to clarify, I didn't say that we're keeping the interdict as a in our back pockets. We're keeping it as a fail-safe should the negotiations fail. So we've initiated the interdict, and we will continue with it despite the fact that DWS and Sibanya is in engagement with Mogale to try and get a resolution. But we're not going to start with a court procedure just because there is now a positive move towards the negotiations. So just to clarify that is what I had meant with we're keeping it in our, we're keeping, we're staying the course with the interdict. Thanks.
Well, Quentin, have you got anything that you want to add just in terms of timelines?
So at the moment, from Mogale City side, it's quite vague, Jenny. So there's no firm timelines that I can share at the moment.
Okay. So if I can jump in, I had a meeting with Mogale City to present our results at the end of last week, I think. And the timelines, as Quentin says, it is vague. The timelines that we were provided with was on the 2nd of October, the site was handed over. It was vague as to who it was handed over to. They were estimating 3 months to get the security upgrade done so that there would be a double layer fence with cameras. The cameras required, and I do concur on this statement. The cameras that are required need to be very specially spec'd. You can't just buy an off-the-shelf, take-a-lot camera. It sounds like military grade is what's required, because the chemicals that surround, the sort of plume of chemicals surrounding a wastewater treatment plant are complex. And so they are going to inevitably end up damaging wires and things like that. And that's really, really important to obviously have addressed that, so that in 2 years' time, they aren't now having to put in a new camera system. That said, I don't believe that the cameras should be holding up the entire thing. And then it sounded as if, and please note my language, so it sounded as if it would then take about 3 months for Sibanye to get just the basics under control to sort of control the situation and have a lot more of the wastewater being processed rather than the current deluge of unprocessed waste. But again, it was not, there was no clear plan of action. It sounded like there were still decisions that needed to be made around some of this. So I'm not sure if that's useful to know, Gwen. I can certainly have a sidebar or give you the contact details of the person at Machale who gave us the information. So if there's nothing else on that, Rodney, let me figure out how to give you the speaking stick. Allow Mike. You should be able to unmute yourself, Rod. Rodney, can you unmute yourself? From my side, you've got control of your mic, Rodney. Okay, while we wait for Rodney to figure out his mic, Rod, if you can just put into the chat if you're having an issue, and one of us will pick up and try and help you. Just in terms of the chat, it seems that there aren't any other queries that have come through. I see we have had a query around collaboration. Absolutely, we are open to collaboration. I think that the more specialists we have, there is the risk that too many cooks spoil the broth, but equally, I think if it's carefully managed and people we play to each other's strengths, I think that we can create really, really strong collaborations. And certainly when, you've got 300 plus challenge areas, there is definitely more than enough scope for people to work. We certainly aren't territorial around where around who works with us and what areas they're in. And we're very open to collaborating with other people. So Precious, thanks for the question, and absolutely just reach out. Are there any other queries? It seems Rod's either stuck or has gone offline. Okay, so with that, I think I'm going to close the session and thank you to each of the speakers who took the time, not just to present today, but took the time to meet with us beforehand and to prep slides. If we could please make all of the slides available so that, no, I am not offline. Oh, okay. Rod, do you want to try typing your question? Because we can't, I've given you access to your speaker. You've just got to unmute yourself on your mic, and then you should be able to speak. But yeah, as I was saying, if each of the speakers could just, those who haven't, just make your slides available to us, and anyone who would like them, I have put my email address on the chat. I'll put our general email address on the chat as well, and you can just reach out to us and we will make a copy of them available. We put it on. Thanks. Cool. And let me just wait to see if Rodney can ask his question. Shame. I don't know. Ryan, are you able to give Rodney a voice more strongly than I can?
I already had a look. It just says disable mic. So obviously from their end, it's saying the mic's not there.
Okay, let me see if he's WhatsApped me. Rodney, I think rather than waiting for you to do it, because it does seem that everyone's, this is the only question. Judy's got another question. Okay, so let's go to Judy. Rodney, you can also voice note me, and then I can listen to your question, and then I can relay your question. Judy, you've got access to your mic.
Hi, thanks very much. The question I had is, you in the beginning, you said something about we need to look at different ways of doing things. And the one way we're not doing is carrying on the discussions that Chris Buckley started with his innovations in terms of dry sanitation. We keep looking at this waterborne solution as the only way to get rid of waste. And in a water scarce country, we shouldn't be doing this. So how far are we in terms of moving to dry sanitation?
So I think Annette responded to that in the question. I'm going to let her respond to it, and then I'm going to give my view from some of the things that I've seen around dry sanitation. But Annette, do you want to respond further?
Yeah. So I did mention in the presentation that we are revising the norms and standards to make it an offence for municipalities to actually grant permission to connect to systems that are already overloaded. And we are recommending for medium densities and low density settlements that we look at decentralized systems, and obviously also where we have these huge commercial developments that require, or not even commercial, residential developments that require bulk connections. That there is a consideration from the Water Services Authority that we have decentralized systems, and this could be dry sanitation or it could be water use efficient sanitation, where there's circulation back from grey water to either have minimal treatment and reuse it for flushing. We're also working with our with our shopping malls. There's a big drive for shopping malls to also reuse their grey water either for their cooling systems or for flushing, so that we can also reduce the load that's going to our wastewater system. So it's not just the wastewater systems, but it's a general relook at how we use our water efficiently. Specifically because our municipalities have got such high non-revenue water. As a water scarce country, we're sitting on an average of 37% non-revenue water. Even for Gauteng, colleagues, the tunnel is closed for 6 months. There's restrictions on our systems, and yet we see people wetting their gardens like the dams are full and going to stay full. We need to be water wise. But yes, in terms of the dry sanitation, there's a mix of research being done or has been done with the Water Research Commission and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to look at closed systems for recirculating, even for schools, that you can have a closed system of wastewater. So there's a lot of technology that's currently going. And in terms of regulation, which I'm from, we are trying to regulate out the non-efficient issues and to make space and enable the use of water efficient systems. But again, it depends also on the market uptake, which we can't dictate. Thanks.
Thanks, Annette. I think that was really, really comprehensive. I mean, I think the one comment that I can have, and I know that the gentleman is on the call, is that we are starting to see really responsible corporates doing pre-treatment before they discharge. And I think that, you know, Judy, if we're talking about doing things differently, while I hear you on dry systems, I have some concerns, particularly when you've got bigger volume of users. But I do think that where we are using water at the moment, we can also have pre-treatment being done by corporates. And it's something that they certainly from an ESG perspective should be taking on board and actively engaging in doing. I mean, I know that within my own household, we're fully off the grid and we have a full treatment plant so that all our water is reused to grow vegetables as well as trees. Rodney, I see you've put a comment through. I'm not sure what this refers to, as in the word this, but your comment is to read it out to the group. Possibly you're looking for a comment. Is this goes from the house to hearties without any sludge, and it is clear in the RDP housing we have changed the manhole, allowing for flowing of gravity water upwards, but no pumps, electricity or toxic chemicals. Maybe you want to just give us some additional background on that. But possibly, Rodney, just sorry, as we challenged with that, what I think I'm going to do is we are running over on from a time perspective. I'm going to close this out. You're welcome to send the full query to me in an email on the info at African Potential. Just let me know who it's directed towards, and we will forward it on to them for them to respond back to you privately. And with that, thank you to everyone. It's been really fantastic to present the work that the team has done over the last 6 months, to hear from a DWS perspective as to the where we are and what's being done, to hear the kinds of collaborations that are taking place with Sibanye-Stillwater and with the Blue Deal, and hopefully, no pressure, Leon, we're going to be able to extend the Blue Deal beyond your 5 sites into a 6th or 7th or an 8th. We'll twist your rubbery arm. And Lindsay, to start looking at the excitement of bringing some of our amazing lessons from the HIV and TB world across into the water world. I think we've done amazingly well as a country on the HIV front, phenomenally. And I'm excited, I think as excited as you, to bring across many of our lessons. And I see we've got Paris on the call from Matchboxology. And Paris, we're very excited to be bringing across many of the lessons you have learned in terms of working with communities and human-centric approaches, into understanding from a municipality perspective and understanding how we co-create with surrounding communities to implement sustainable projects. Rodney, thanks for your comment. Okay, all have a lovely day further. And I believe if you're in Joburg, you're in for a bit of rain this afternoon, so do appreciate it, possibly a little bit more than you would have yesterday. Cheers.